All right, so this is our sign up form. Now let me show you how to add additional fields here. So once again, we go to our hosted page where we create the log object. Here we add another property, additional sign up fields. Now note the capitalization. So the first letter of every word is uppercase. So if you write sign up with the lowercase u, it doesn't work. So make sure to get it right. We set this property to an array. And in this array, for each field, we're going to have an object. At a minimum, we need to set the name property. So name, I set this to name. So I want to capture the name of each user. Now, if I wanted to get the birth date, I would use birth date. If I wanted to get the contact name, I would use contact name. So note that here I'm using the camel notation because the value we set here will be the key in a JSON object that represents a user. You're going to see that in a second. So let's get the name for each user. Now here, optionally, we can also set placeholder, and this is the value we display in the input box, name. We can also implement validation. Again, for that, you need to look at the documentation. Just look up additional sign-up fields in Auth0. Now let's save the changes. So if I refresh this page, now in our sign-up form, note that below the email and password, we have this new field, name. So let me register a new user and set the name to Mosh. Beautiful. Now back in Auth0, let's go to the users page. So here you can see all the users registered in your application. This is one of the beautiful things about Auth0. You don't need to build all these screens by hand. So here we have a full user management. You can see my account here, my email, my last login, my number of logins, the kind of connection I have. So in this case, I'm using username password. If I logged in via Facebook, you would see Facebook here. You can also create a new user manually. You can block users. You can reset their password. It's very powerful. Now, if you don't want to store your users in Auth0, you can store them in your existing database. But for that, you need to get a higher subscription, and there's some setup involved. Again, it's beyond the scope of this course. Now, let's look at this Mosh user account. So here you can see all my details. You can see my devices. You can see the history of my logins. You can see my location. You can see a raw JSON object that represents me. So note these two properties. You have seen them before. Email verified and email. Now here we have another property, user underline metadata. So any additional fields we add will be stored here. Now look at this key value pair. The key is name. And this is what we said when creating an additional sign-up field. Okay? Now when the user logs in, I want to get their name and display it in the navigation bar. So let's go to the hosted pages. Here we need to change the scope and add profile. So basically this scope property defines what this access token can do, what resources it can access. So here we're saying we want an access token that can access the profile of a user. Now let's save the changes. So back in Auth service, when we get the user's profile, I want to log this on the console so you can see more clearly. Profile. Once again, I'm going to log in. All right, now let's take a look at the console. So here's our profile object. Now we have a few additional properties. We have name, but this name is set to the user's email. It's not the name that we have in the user metadata. I'm going to show you how to fix that in a second. So let's quickly review the other properties here. We've got name, nickname, picture, and updated at. So when we include profile in the scope, we can access more attributes of a user. And that's why we got these 4 additional properties. In the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to get the user's name from user metadata.